Trey Hendrickson holding court with reporters talking about why he will not be a Bengal if he doesn't get a new contract in 2025. And Caleb Williams did not want to be a Bear, but now he might be thankful. All that and more coming up on today's Peacock and Williamson.
NFL analyst Brian Peacock and former NFL scout Matt Williamson bring you expert NFL analysis every day in less than 30 minutes. Get an inside look at the NFL on the field and in the front office with elite breakdowns to next-level analysis and in-depth information only for the real NFL fans. This is Peacock and Williamson, and it starts now.
Welcome to the Peacock and Williamson NFL Show. Brian Peacock alongside Matt Williamson at BD Peacock at Williamson NFL. Love our everydayers. Thanks everybody so much for making us your first listen on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And if you're new to the program, welcome. And please think about hitting that subscribe button. Subscribe up on YouTube or wherever you are listening to this podcast, and drop a comment, drop a question for next week mailbag on the socials or on the YouTube comments. And some interesting contractual stuff going on, roster stuff going on right now. And this is our wheelhouse, Matt. And this is where we like to geek out on the NFL and how teams are built and how rosters are built. And you are a Pittsburgh guy. You cover the Pittsburgh Steelers. You worked for the Browns. And a team in that division, the Cincinnati Bengals, have always done things a certain way. And they've got an interesting one going on right now. Paid all their offensive stars, T. Higgins and Jamar Chase and Joe Burrow, getting all this money, and a team with such an awful defense last year, their best defensive player, they're like, yeah, you know what, might not have enough for you. And what an odd scene it was. Very untraditional what's going on there right now with Trey Hendrickson standing there, impromptu sort of press conference, not at his locker, but on like the practice field with reporters, looking like he's ready for a tea time in his polo shirt while his teammates are walking by in their unpadded practice uniforms, doing what they're doing with the rookie mini camp or OTAs or whatever it was at Bengals practice facilities. And he said flatly no when asked if he would show up without a new contract and play for the Cincinnati Bengals this year. So definitely a standoff, and very standoffish feeling with how that all went down, not sanctioned by the PR team, by the Cincinnati Bengals. And he said he felt like, to paraphrase, that maybe the Bengals weren't being exactly, honest about everything that was going on with their negotiation. He's upset with how things have gone, not hearing from the team since the draft. And he mentioned a text that he got from his head coach, Zach Taylor, that said some shark attacks are provoked and some are not. And he's like, what is going on here? He's like, I'm going to tell my story to the reporters myself. I don't care if it's sanctioned. I don't care if I'm at a podium. I'm going to talk to him. So he just rolled through to camp and called over the reporters and said, hey, guys, I'm going to talk. What odd situation going on as we head toward Bengals training camp in 2025.
Really odd situation, and a great player that is vastly underpaid at the moment. I know he's not young, but still he's worth way more than he's getting. And from what I understand, I've never met him. I don't know anybody that knows him directly, but from a lot of people have said he's very, I don't want to say outspoken, but like he believes in what he believes in. He's not afraid to stand up for himself. He might actually go through with it. Like everyone says, I'm not going to play, and then the first check doesn't come, and you're like, I'm going to play. Nobody ever holds out anymore. This is worrisome to me, though, and I think this organization as a whole is worrisome to me. That the way that they do business is hard in today's NFL. Like, just even look at their draft. I mean, they never move from their draft slot. They're the hardest team to trade with in the league. Players are constantly not happy with the organization. They have like the worst facilities and scouting staff in the league. And I just tweeted this yesterday, coincidentally. I mean, they lost 4 games last year when they scored 33 or more points. I mean, that's the most in NFL history. And they didn't do much to change it. Yes, you keep Higgins and you keep that strength to strength, and that passing game is unbelievable. And what a gift they got with Burrow. But I wonder where they'd be if they hadn't got the first pick in the draft that year. I mean, I don't think the coaching staff's great. I don't think ownership's great. And I believe the defense is horrendous. And I think the offensive line is a problem, that you really are only good at one thing. And on defense, you're only good at one thing or one player. And now you're mistreating him to the nth degree. And I kind of understand, hey, we don't want to have so much of our cap tied up in 4 players after paying Higgins and Chase. But then you got to move on. I mean, you can't just hardball these athletes today and just, we're the organization. They got to do whatever we want. I think their ways are outdated.
And I do want to clarify. So it was Zach Taylor's text wasn't the shark thing. The shark attack comment was from Trey Hendrickson, and he said that there are unprovoked and provoked shark attacks. This one was provoked, and he talked about the comments and statements that have been made by the team at the owners' meetings, and then Zach Taylor, the head coach's text to him was informing him that he would be fined for skipping mandatory minicamp, and mandatory minicamp is a ways off here at the end of May, or actually the beginning of June, right? First week of June, is that when mandatory minicamp is?
Yeah, usually. Every team's a day or two different, but yeah, in that neighborhood, right.
So that's kind of what set him off. And Trey Hendrickson, a little self-scouting too, said, look, sometimes I got to, be better and myself too, and better at handling situations like this. But clearly he doesn't want to wait around and doesn't like the operation and how things are going there. And he is underpaid for what he is. And I would argue, to your point a minute ago, Matt, that it's a lot easier to find, maybe not exactly T. Higgins, but a T. Higgins role as a number 2 wide receiver in today's NFL. It is to find a 17-sack defensive end, especially when your current way of doing things is not helping you win games and get closer to a Super Bowl. You got to get better on defense at some point.
And you drafted Miles Murphy in the first round. You draft Stewart from A&M, who's extremely raw in the first round. Wouldn't you want your best player, your best defensive end to be around those guys all the time and teach them the traits? And, they have not been developed. They need a lot of development between them. The defense as a whole has not developed talent well. But like I would use this example on Steelers Nation Radio yesterday. It's like I want Derek Harmon just following Cam Hayward around everywhere he goes. Well, right. I want those defensive ends just following Hendricks around everywhere he goes. If he gets a salad for lunch, get a salad for lunch. Whatever you do, just do what he does.
Right.
And now you're mistreating him. It makes no sense to me.
And I do understand from an organizational standpoint. It's like, look, you signed a contract, you're under contract, so we expect you to show up and
I get it
on a deal, and that's okay, and that's fine, and just be honest about it, and as honest as you can be about everything. Then I think it'll all work out in the end. Behind the scenes, are things being done honestly? I'm not sure. So I kind of understand some of the Bengals' stance on this, but it does feel like the Bengals just operate in a different way, and I could completely understand why Trey Hendrickson feels the way he feels. And this is not a unique thing. This happens every offseason. There are a few players that can't get a deal done, and maybe the team and the player don't see eye to eye. And my question is, how did, were you not able to trade him? Like, did you not know that this was kind of the direction things were going? And before the draft, could you not get something of value to help you build the defensive side of your football team? And especially if you're going to pay all the money, you need cheap talent on the defensive side of the ball. So that would make total sense to me if you traded him for picks to continue to add young, cheaper talent on the defensive side of the ball and rebuild that side of the ball, new defensive coordinator. That would all make sense. But just letting this linger, and I don't know how the Bengals expected this to all end. And, you can say a lot in May, but, in the end, do they give him a contract that's still the best for Trey Hendrickson? He ends up signing it. Does he cave once he actually starts getting fined? Because the fines can stack up. So I don't know. Interesting situation going on with Trey Hendrickson. Something you don't really see a lot, where a guy just calls his own impromptu press conference.
Right. Really frustrating. I mean, that doesn't happen at all, where you surprise reporters and say, hey, let's have a chat on the sidelines. And you mentioned the new D coordinator. So we haven't said this on the air here, but I've gotten strong impressions in talking to Bengals people that they basically blamed Amarumo for not developing all these high picks. It's easier to fire one guy than say, boy, we just drafted the wrong players. And I don't think it's a coincidence that you hired a college defensive coordinator to deal with young guys. Now, will that work or not? I have no idea. I don't know if it's the best strategy at all, but I think that's their line of thinking is, we'll take Notre Dame's defensive coordinator who dealt with a bunch of young guys and we'll learn this NFL thing together. We'll see,
And we always talk about how teams lie, especially lying season before the draft, and then they can't lie anymore once they make their picks and and I think it's the same with the Cincinnati Bengals. What they're telling us is the offense is fine, the offense is awesome, the defense, not necessarily the talent was the problem, but it was a development problem and a coaching problem.
Yeah.
And so they changed coaches, and so
we'll see
if that's the case, right? But your best defensive player and your best pass rusher, it's hard to get better if you don't have him on the field. So
they got your only asset on that side,
or get something for him. And now you can't get anything for him to help you this year. If you get anything for him, you're getting future draft picks now. If you end up trading him during the summer,
right? But if I'm the Lions, I'm all over trying to get Hendrickson.
Next, I want to ask you where you think you would pay Hendrickson, because the defensive line money has gone crazy, and that's kind of one of Hendrickson's things. Where should he be paid? Caleb Williams turns out didn't want to be a Chicago Bear originally. Might he have lucked into the best possible situation? And could the Bears have a 4,000-yard passer for the first time in franchise history in 2025 with a new offensive-minded head coach and Derrick Henry getting paid as well? Next. This episode of Peacock and Williamson is brought to you by Gametime. And look, I've said this before. Let's just put it out there. If you are a sports fan, which you are because you're listening to this podcast, you ever want to go to a comedy show, you ever want to go to a concert, a theater event, whatever it is, something to get tickets for, you got to have Gametime in your pocket, ready to go.
BP, I used Gametime tonight. I'm going to Pearl Jam in a couple hours. How about that?
Yeah. Pearl Jam, Williamson.
Pearl Jam in the Berg. Let's go.
I've used it for concerts. I've used it for baseball games. We got the NBA playoffs right now, the intensity, the buzzer beaters, fans losing their minds. The atmosphere is something you have to experience live for playoff basketball. It's such a fun atmosphere. And if you want in, Gametime makes it fast and easy to get seats, even for the biggest playoff games. Prices on the app actually drop closer to tip-off. Killer last-minute deals, panoramic seat views, no surprise fees. Gametime is a total game changer. And all you got to do to take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime is download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. And hey, you could go see Pearl Jam. You can go see a baseball game. You can go see a playoff game. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off. Download the Gametime app today. Last minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. All right, Matt. Hendrickson. So he's not Myles Garrett, $40 million.
Right.
But he's getting paid, what is it, $16 million, I think, at the end of his contract. So last year was contract. And if you're Trey Hendrickson, you're like, okay, I'll play it out, and you ball out again, you might get the franchise tag slapped on you too. The Bengals have done this before. So, where should he be paid? Like what level? Because he's not in the elite tier. I think we would agree. And I don't know I don't know if he's asking for $40 million, because I wouldn't pay that if I was the Bengals. But where should he get paid? Like what tier is Trey Hendrickson in right now?
That's interesting because these guys are making a ton. And I was starting to look it up because Danielle Hunter recently signed a new deal. And I'm looking at it now. Looks like 1 year, $35 million for Hunter, who's a similar age too. Similar production. I would say they're tier 2 defensive ends. You think that's safe? They're behind Garrett and
no,
I get the same. Yeah,
it's a perfect comp. And like for Hendrickson, like you're not getting any younger, so you kind of need to cash in with this crazy money as early as possible. As you get hurt. I wonder if they could do a deal where it's like, all right, look, I'll come back, 1 year deal. It's got to be $30 million or whatever it is, $35 million. You got to pay me what the market should pay me for this year. And I'll come and I'll play for 1 year, and we have to, negotiate out the franchise tag. So I'm going to be a free agent, but I'll play this year. Let's go. And we'll see how good we can be.
And let's run it back. You can't get anything else for me today to help us win. I want to be part of this. Maybe we can win the Super Bowl this year. Their Vegas odds to win the Super Bowl are like 5th best, which I wouldn't make that bet, but I mean, they're not too far off. You're making 16. How about we double it for a season, and go from there? That doesn't sound crazy to me.
That doesn't sound crazy to me. But to be honest with you, I think, did you really need, T. Higgins felt like such a luxury. If you just do the Hendrickson extension early before some of those extra deals, before the Myles Garrett deal. It's going to be cheaper, and you can find another wide receiver. You've already got your true one. You've got your quarterback. You should be able to develop talent behind those guys, in my opinion. So,
but there are teams, the Bucks, the Eagles. You can pay 2 receivers and a quarterback. I mean, It's not insane. Yeah. It's not easy, but you can do it and still have a good roster. And the Bengals apparently, I mean, they do things differently. I'm trying to be as kind as possible.
Right. Understood. The Chicago Bears have been a weird franchise as well, especially when it comes to quarterbacks. And apparently a new Seth Wickersham book highlights some wild stuff that happened behind the scenes. And I think it's probably better for Caleb Williams that this stuff wasn't out there during the draft process to make him look like a diva. And there was already some thoughts, and maybe there was some whispers behind the scenes of why people were talking about him a certain way. It wasn't just his painted fingernails or whatever before the draft. But he sought a way around going to the Chicago Bears and potentially like talking with lawyers. And it's like, look, do I go to the UFL or whatever it is for a year? How do you circumvent the draft completely, potentially? Because his camp and his dad, and they just didn't believe in the Bears' ability to develop a quarterback. And then you see his coaching staff gets fired after his rookie year.
Yeah.
And their process was probably not great. And so to be honest, I understand it. And he was kind of right. But now you get Ben Johnson in year 2. So could it now actually be a great spot for him with all the talent? I'm looking at that roster now, and the fact that Luther Burden fell to them in the 2nd round, and that Amon-Ra St. Brown role for Luther Burden potentially.
Pretty exciting.
Johnson's offense, but you got Odunze now in year 2 with Williams, who've had that year together. Could they take off in year 2? I'm bullish on the Bears, but every other time, nearly in my entire life that I've been bullish on the Bears, came back to bite me. So should I not be so bullish on the Chicago Bears? It's not like the water in Chicago, right? There are reasons. Can they get this thing right?
I don't know. I mean, the older I get, the more I do this, the presumably wiser I become. There's just some organizations I don't trust, and Cincinnati's one of them. They happen to have a top 4 superstar quarterback, but the Bears are another. I mean, after this quarterback thing, you can't tell me it's just a string of bad luck. I mean, after a while, you have to say, it's not you, it's me. I mean, and people have told me when it adds up that part of it, it's a small part of it, but it does matter, is you play in very windy conditions with not so great turf. It's not a great place to pass the football.
Yeah.
Still, they're 0 for a million on their quarterbacks. I mean, you can't. I'm not saying Mitch Trubisky would have been a star if he went to the Niners, but they ruin everyone they get. And I can't imagine that that's not on them to some degree. And I know they're a storied franchise, but I'm not real impressed with how they do business overall. Now, to your point, I love their coaching hire. I love that they went out and purchased an interior offensive line. Burden, Loveland. I mean, this is a really, really good environment for any quarterback, let alone a young one to develop. And coincidentally, I just happened to put this stat out yesterday because I read it and cut and pasted it. But Caleb Williams took a league-leading 68 sacks last year. That's the 3rd most in history by any quarterback, and lost 466 yards, which is the fourth most by any quarterback. So he's not without blame. He's a super prospect. He's going to be the first pick in the draft, but USC's O-line so bad, he's always under pressure. He takes sacks. It's on him. I mean, sacks are a quarterback stat at least as much as an O-line stat. And he needs to fix that for sure, amongst other things. But, boy, he's in a great environment.
Very interesting stuff there. And I think it's funny because it happens so often with these quarterbacks. And, there was the Shador stuff too with Dion, and how that ended up happening. And I mean, crazy that he ended up going in the 5th round, but they're never able to control the thing they want to control before the league has you, man. And you're going to have to end up going to whatever that team is. And you hope it works out. And that's just the way it is. And it might actually work out for Caleb Williams this time and the Chicago Bears this time. And look, you play half your games outside of Chicago. So
that's 100% true.
Yeah. The win, there's just something else going on there. I'm bullish on it, man. I think this time it might work. And obviously Caleb Williams is very talented. And if it doesn't work, then clearly they got the wrong guy, because there's a lot of talent. And I think they're doing it right to try to get things done on offense in the right way.
Maybe they figured it out. I mean, on paper, they look like a really good offense. We'll see. You can make a lot of money over the years betting unders on Bears win-loss game totals.
One contract for a star player has gotten done. Derrick Henry extended. It's not defensive end money, but he got some running back money and some notes on the schedule as well with rest. Next. So Derrick Henry, 2 years, $30 million.
Yeah,
it's not big money. Derrick Henry's one of the best running backs in the NFL, been that way for a long time. And according to Ian Rappaport, the Baltimore Ravens and Derrick Henry agreed to a 2-year contract extension, averages about $15 million per. So the most ever for a running back over 30 years old. The deal, goes on to talk about the agents that guaranteed it. $25 million of that fully guaranteed. So that's pretty important to get some guarantees into the second year of a deal. But I mean, that's where we're at. I mean, the Saquon extension wasn't some long-term deal either. And he's a lot younger than Derrick Henry. And I just think it's the smart way to play it for teams. And you want to reward that player and pay them market value if you have a top running back, but it's all short-term stuff. If Saquon or Derrick Henry blow their knee out, you got to pay him for a year and a half, essentially. And then you can get out. It's not like this 4 or 5 year contract for massive money, and you're paying them half as much as you're paying wide receivers these days. So I like it. You shouldn't have to pay a long-term contract for a running back, and you shouldn't have to draft them high, in my opinion. And teams like the Eagles and the Ravens are doing well, and they're still able to pay those running backs too, which I like. So I think the league's kind of figuring out how to do this running back dance.
I don't have much more to add. I think you said that perfect, and I also think that your teammates, the Eagles O linemen and D linemen and Ravens safeties and receivers realize the value of the player, and kind of the opposite of what we talked about the Bengals. There's something to treating your players right, making your locker room a place where people want to be and other people want to come to. And I was talking with Wig on this on Locked On NFL this morning, and my example with Henry was like, I never have this guy on my fantasy team because every year I think he's going to hit the wall, but he's never going to. I think I'm done. He's a super. I mean,
he did have the year like age 28 or whatever it was, where he did have the seasoning injury, right?
Yeah, he missed like half the games.
That's it. And then and there's like, oh wait, Derrick Henry's still Derrick Henry. Year and a half later. Okay. Well, we're back. We're back in the game. But
even his last year with Tennessee was a lot better than you think. He had like me and you blocking for him, and he still made a lot of yards on his own. And we were having this conversation too. Like, Lamar might be the most unique running quarterback I can remember. Henry might be the most unique style running back I can remember. They clearly are the most unique running backfield I can remember. They're so different, and they're both so good at what they do. But they're both a different type of artist, but they're both great artists. You know what I mean?
And I'm still blown away because Derrick Henry is just, you'd see him and you're like, oh, who's this new defensive end recruit at Alabama?
Yeah, edge rusher, right.
That's a running back. And he's so high cut and these long legs. I'm like, I'm surprised because you don't want to take him on high. So I'm surprised that his knees aren't just dust. And
I know.
But he's borderline cyborg stuff, man. He's fun to watch. So.
From what I understand, he has like a crazy workload in high school. I think he's like the all-time leading rusher in high school history. Won the Heisman at Bama, despite them being loaded at running back. He has a lot of touches there.
Yeah,
and he looks the same. He still runs away from people. He's still physical as could be. Still doesn't change directions. Great, but he makes it work. I mean,
could you imagine really trying to tackle Derrick Henry in high school?
Could you imagine? Right.
I mean.
When I was at Pitt, Pitt and the Steelers share a facility. I was a GA at Pitt and kind of new to the business. And for whatever reason, Jerome Bettis and I used to get out of our cars in the morning about the same time. And I would just look at him and be like, I would never be able to tackle him in 100 years. I mean, like I can't imagine.
A man is one thing, but when you're a grown man and everyone else is still kids in high school, not even going to play college ball, and you're
Right.
like, an undersized linebacker at 175 pounds, you're like, here, go tackle this 5-star Derrick Henry, who's already 230 pounds.
Right. That's like Jim Brown was bigger than most of his linemen. Linemen at the time were like 225, 230. And not only is he the best athlete, but he's like one of the biggest guys on the field. Henry has some of that, which is just insane. Like you said, he looks like a defensive end.
So you can go back to yesterday's podcast, and we broke down most of the big thoughts and inequities and takeaways from the 2025 NFL schedule release. But Matt, you want to get a little bit deeper into some of the rest and some of the rest disparities. And I feel like there's more and more rest disparities now. And do you remember what year they started doing the Thursday night football?
I don't, but boy, it's been a while now, but that definitely is a component of it.
Yeah.
And
it hit me because I saw the list of most and least rests since for the last 25 years.
Okay.
And they're all recent seasons.
Yeah.
The worst problem, or just with all the holiday games and the Christmas games, and is there just
I think
more
that's a lot to
days?
do with it.
There's just more days that are going to be different for teams nowadays.
And then there was a goofy COVID year where teams were playing on Tuesdays and Wednesdays, and Christmas was on a Wednesday last year. Like, trust me, the Steelers were one of them. They played 3 games in 11 days. Frankly, I think the league just cares less about rest, and they say they do, but I also think, I know that before long there's going to be an 18-game schedule with 2 byes, and that'll make things a little more palatable.
It's the only way this thing can go.
The only way it works, right? Yeah. And plus, the overseas games can complicate things, but frankly, all I did was just steal this from Warren Sharp. Warren Sharp does a tremendous job analyzing schedules. And I'm sure when the schedule came out Wednesday night, he probably stayed up all night calculating this stuff. But he's been doing it for a few years. And what he does is, if we both play Sunday of week 2, or better conversation, my team plays Sunday of week 2, your team plays Monday of week 2, and we meet in week 3, well, I have a 1-day rest advantage over you. That's all the way he figures it out. If I'm coming off a bye and you're not, I get a 7-day rest advantage over you. So what he does is he goes through every team in the league and figures out their cumulative rest advantage over the course of the year. And what's crazy, to your point about recency, last year, the Ravens had the best rest advantage of anyone in history, from what I remember. I remember looking at this 1 year ago, the day after the schedule came out, and he's like, this is just unfair. They have a massive advantage over the rest of the league because they're playing so many games with at least 1 day rest advantage. So I urge you to go sign up at Sharp Football Analysis. He does a tremendous job, and follow him on Twitter. But I do think it's interesting that the tops and bottoms of the league is pretty distinct. I mean, the Lions are number 1. They get 13 more days of rest than their opponents. And there's only 1 game all year where they have a rest disadvantage. And it's only 1 game. 1 game, 1 day. And on 4, 5, 8 different games, they have a rest advantage. So they're plus 13. Miami's plus 11. LA, I assume that's the Chargers. I'm not sure. Yeah, that's the Rams, actually. It's plus 10. San Francisco, plus 9. We talked about how their easy schedule. But on the flip side, Vegas only has 1 game all year that they have a rest advantage, and it's only 1 day. And they've got a ton of others where they're at a disadvantage. So they're at minus 19 in terms of days rest advantage compared to the Lions at plus 13. So there's 3 teams that really stand out negatively. Washington's minus 13, New Orleans is minus 14, and Vegas is minus 19, which is bonkers. And then there's an interesting one in the middle where the Jags only have 2 games where they have a rest advantage, and it's only 1 each time. And they only have 1 game where they have a rest disadvantage, and it's only 1. But it is amazing, and I think your point's really accurate, that this is definitely a new thing, that there's so many games now where one of the 2 teams has a rest advantage.
You would think the games that happen overseas, that would count as, probably at least an extra day. in rest disadvantage just from the travel, right? And it's not, your opponent there has to travel, but just the cumulative, like, okay, it's probably just a lot easier to not have an international game just as far as the season goes and what that feels like too.
Well, like Brazil's crazy. I mean, did you see all the mileage? The Chargers are setting the league record for most miles flown over the course of the year, and it's like 3 or 4 times more than the Bengals this year. I mean, that's got to wear you out over the course of the year. But to your point, and I know this just because the Steelers are playing in Dublin, the plane ride from Pittsburgh to Dublin is only like half an hour longer than Pittsburgh to Seattle.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah. But I mean, it'd be different, obviously, if it was Seattle and Dublin.
Yeah. You just have to get used to the time difference, but it's
right.
The length of the travel. Wow, I didn't know that. Okay,
I mean that's only for East Coast teams, though. I mean, they're playing the Vikings. That's a long ass ride for the Vikings.
Yeah, tell me about it, man. I've done. I flew to New Zealand.
Oh wow!
With one, it was to Germany, and then from Germany to Australia, then a little quick one over down to New Zealand.
Okay,
my honeymoon and. That's I mean, it's not they have better amenities, but that is not a fun flight. Those international flights, man, the distance and like, for big guys too. It's like even worse to be in a plane for a big person than a small person.
Yeah. And for the Browns, for the Hula Bowl, I flew from Cleveland to Chicago, which is short, and then Chicago to Honolulu, which is not short. It'd have been nice to stop in San Fran and say hello to you or something. Yeah.
I'm blown away by all the travel, just that even in media, like people are flying everywhere all the time. Yeah. And I'm lucky that I can work in media and, have a full-time gig, and I don't have to fly everywhere all the time. That's got to get old. But, you would have those sweet, sweet hotel miles in a hotel. I mean, I've heard some crazy stories about, I think it's like a beat writer like contest to see you can get the most points, hotel points and miles and all the free stuff they're able to get from those, and like never have to pay money for vacation ever because you have all these points and miles.
I mean, trust me, I do a schedule release show with 2 guys that travel with the team, that cover the team, and second the schedule comes out, am I driving here? Am I flying here? I'm making the arrangements, and boy, this is going to be terrible. Can I get home in time to write my article or do my show on Monday? And, I don't envy that at all.
Thanks everybody for making us your first listen here on the Locked On Podcast Network. Please subscribe up on YouTube and anywhere you get your podcast. Helps us with the algorithms if you're all subbed up. And I know there's a lot of everydayers that still just haven't clicked that subscribe button. So do that. Make sure we're in your feed. And Matt and I will be back Monday right here. Peacock and Williamson.